Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you all may have your fears, because it's apparent that the sophomore slump is here. Let's talk today about Detroit Red Wings Calder winner Moritz Seider. Because when it comes to the way that he's been performing this season, it's been very apparent to me and the Red Wings following that Moritz Seider's dominance, the reign of terror that he imposed on the rest of the National Hockey League in 2021-2022, it appears it's kind of taken a little bit of a step back. Now, obviously, Seider is not a bum. He's not a bad hockey player. It's just this season, when it comes to what Seider was last year, which was honestly one of the best U25 players in the NHL, period. He was a guy that was in a lot of people's minds, setting himself up to be a Norris contender as soon as this season. We had journalists in, I believe it was Bleacher Report, as well as a few in The Athletic, suggesting that if Moritz Seider ended up winning himself a few Norris votes here and there for the 2023 awards, it wouldn't necessarily be the most surprising thing. And for good reason, right? We knew Seider was an absolute monster last year for the Red Wings. He was playing with Danny DeKeyser, and DeKeyser's not great, so Seider kind of had to carry that pairing. He was dishing out reverse hits left and right, and in a system where he was kind of relied upon to being the best defenseman on the team, he stepped up to the task, and he was really good, and he also put up 50 points in the process. So him winning the Calder was a slam dunk, but this season, under a brand new coach with a new line mate that is a lot better than Danny DeKeyser, it's strange to see, but things haven't really been going Seider's way in the ways that people had hoped. In 15 games played so far, Moritz Seider has 5 assists, and that's it. He's on pace for 27 points, which would be half of what he accomplished last season, which definitely is not what a lot of Red Wings fans were expecting heading into this season. But of course, the numbers are just numbers, right? When it comes to how Moritz Seider has been playing, how exactly is he doing there? Well, the thing is, when it comes to defensemen, there are charts that we can look at. We can see Seider's expected shots differential against whatever. There are things that we can look at comparative to other defensemen on the Red Wings, but long story short, pretty much when it comes to how Red Wings fans are viewing Seider so far, it's quite apparent that the sophomore slump is kind of hitting the guy. And maybe it's not even hitting him for the reasons that we normally see a sophomore slump hit players. The reason I say that is because under normal circumstances, when a rookie is so good in the National Hockey League, all of a sudden, that guy puts his name on the map. And when other NHL teams start playing against these guys, the next season, they're like, okay, well, we have all this game tape of this player from last year, and we now know how to counter him. He does this when he goes into the corner. When he goes up the rush, he normally tries to do this. And so it's easier to combat these newer players in their second years of the NHL. It's why players normally become their best after a few seasons when they have all the time for themselves to adapt and to adapt to other people adapting to them. It's kind of a nice paradoxical way of development and growth. But for Moritz Seider, it's not necessarily like teams are finding a way to shut him down, quote unquote. It more so seems to be a problem of whom he gets deployed with, as well as his own sort of tendencies. This is a brand new coach after all, and this is a new system that he's going to have to get accustomed to, and he's playing with a line mate that, even though he is a lot better than Danny DeKeyser, this Sherratt-Seider pairing just hasn't necessarily been the best so far. And that's not even to discredit Ben Sherratt. These guys are both talented players, it's just together, they're still trying to get things going in the ways that a lot of people, myself included, thought would be possible. When I think about Ben Sherratt, I think about a guy that's able to go out there into his own net front slot and just battle it out with everybody wearing a different sweater. Just going out there and clobbering guys, making their lives extraordinarily difficult. And for Seider, I think about a guy who dishes out a lot of reverse hits, who breaks the puck out extremely well, and whose defensive efficiency and anticipation skills are just so refined. Unfortunately, this season we haven't been seeing too much of those reverse hits, and the breakout hasn't been as good as we thought it would be either. This season has been somewhat of a growing pains period for Moritz Seider, and there are a few Red Wings fans that I'd been seeing out there asking, hey, is Seider kind of hurt? He's not really dishing out those reverse hits as often. Is that because somewhere in his body he's kind of hurting a little bit, and he doesn't want to aggravate any potential injury? I'm just a guy on YouTube here, so I can't confirm or deny if that's the case, but but the fact that it's even being asked in the first place is kind of an indicative point as to how Seider has sort of become less effective this season. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go out there and give up on the guy. If you remember the video that we made when he was drafted 6th overall by the Red Wings in 2019, I was a really big fan of the pick, and I was one of the only people that was a fan of the pick. In fact, that comment section in the video of the actual draft stream, it's got people saying, hey, Lego, thanks for making this video back in 2019 because it made me excited for the pick. And now, 3 years later in 2022, we're all seeing that this was probably the best pick they could have made because Seider is very talented. I'm not going to go out there and give up on the guy based off of 15 games worth of a sample. And in fact, there are other people talking about things like deployment, not with Ben Chiarot, but with the forwards as well. Here's a comment on the Red Wings subreddit from Majora's Shoe that I actually think is quite interesting. It comes on a post made by ZZE0001. It's a chart from JFresh talking about expected goals for and goals against for the Red Wings and their defensemen. This is the comment that I thought was interesting enough. You know it's not accounted for? Watch the game, and it's referring to a game from a few days ago, and see when Seider is deployed outside of special teams. You won't see him on the ice with Larkin very much. Just like last year, Seider faces tough matchups, but he also plays while the top lines are resting. And this idea sort of adds another level of responsibility to what Seider is able to do, wherein he's playing off against top teams and top lines, and his own top line is not going out there combating the top line of the opposite team. It kind of makes for an interesting situation where all of a sudden these number one centers on opposite squads are being challenged by a Ben Chiarot and Moritz Seider pairing that hasn't really gotten their groove together just yet because they're still accustoming themselves to the new system that Derek Lalonde has. At the end of the day, they're not playing terribly, they're just not playing as well as people thought they would be. And that in and of itself is a direct contradiction to a lot of the predictions that people had saying, oh, you know, Seider could win the Norris this year, Seider could get 70 points this year. I don't know if the points thing was actually a thing that people were saying, but I mean, he had 50 last year, so the sky's really the limit as to what he could accomplish this season, right? But at the end of the day, though, I, for one, am still a big Moritz Seider fan. One of the biggest out there. In fact, no, I'm pretty small. I'm only 5'3", so nah, I'm not really a big fan. I'm a small fan, but I do believe in Moritz Seider's ability to eventually grow and adapt from this. He is still only 21 years old, so there's a lot of development time here for the guy to eventually become the best version of himself. That's not going to happen this season. It might not even happen next season or the season after that, but based off of what we had seen in the rookie season, we know that Seider has himself the tools. He's got the capabilities to being great in this league. And in fact, when people are going out there comparing you to Nick Lidstrom in your rookie season, that's a pretty tall task to follow up with. So a little bit of regression, not the biggest deal in the world. Talk to the comments, though, either way, all your thoughts about Moritz Seider and the sophomore slump that he has been exhibiting. Do you think there's a few more angles that we should tackle here when it comes to this Seider conversation, or do you think we kind of discussed most of it here in the video? Either way, let me know in the comments all your thoughts about Seider and where you think he's going to go for the rest of the year. How do you think the Chiarot-Seider pairing has played so far, and do you have any suggestions as to how they could improve their game? Obviously, you could just say, oh, score more points. Like, that's easy, but realistically, how do you think that's going to happen? So talk to the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9, and bye.